America on the race down towards the hairpin. We'll see how this one unfolds, though, as we'll take a look at our starting grid for semi-final number 1. Sebastian Job on pole position alongside Moritz Lerner, who held onto that pole for most of the session, denied at the end, as we'll race down towards the first corner. A slightly slower start from the G2 Esports man, who's on the left-hand side of shot now, as they race their way down towards the first corner. Moritz Lerner's got a slight overlap, has to back out of it, and this could be big for Marcel Czinczyk to potentially get his way through, and James Bolben as well. They'll go either way, 3 wide up towards turn 2. That mistake from Lerner might have opened the door for those to come through. Marcel Czinczyk drags it around the inside. James Bolben trying to stick it around the outside as they head out into the Parabolica. There's drama in the background for the Furia car.
Yeah, absolutely. They're dropping down like a stone. They will not be pleased with that whatsoever. But still, the fight continues up at the front end. We have, of course, got Moritz Lerner there as well. Not forgetting Marcel Czinczyk. James Baldwin also trying to work his way forward. They head down now into the very, very tight hairpin bend. Now heading through Spitz Curve and now powering onwards and upwards, heading through this next right as well. You see the Audi R8 LMS now being pressurised by the Mercedes as the R8 G car of Marcel Czinczyk. You see him in the bottom left of your screen now being peppered by James Baldwin, the world's fastest gamer. Enter now Mitchell de Jong as well with an almighty send. Heading through now into the second sector. They go in tandem now, and Mitchell de Jong now in between him. He's got Luke Bennett as well, not to mention James Baldwin now in 4th too. The gap's so minimalistic though as they enter the stadium section. An incredible start here, Lewis.
Yeah, it really is. That was wild as they were heading through. There's more wildness happening, though. Niels Nyox getting escorted out wide by Thomas Tattler. Will Race Control have anything to say about that? Big send straight back down the inside. That was very silly from Niels Nyox. That was crazy. I don't know what he was thinking there. Dara McCormack makes his way through. 3 wide as they come through. Thibaut Casabon on the right-hand side. There was nowhere for Niels Nyox to go and all of that. And it just continues. And Thomas Tattler's chances of going to Munich is over.
It is indeed. Remember, he has to try and get himself at least into the top 10 of this semi-final to at least score the necessary points to put him in the final conversation, obviously, when it comes to Munich. But now it looks like a distant memory and certainly a distant conversation. He was trying to close down to Eamon Murphy, had every chance of doing so. But obviously now, since that collision with Niels Nyox, a very controversial moment as well. No doubt the race director, Tor, is going to have a massive look at that one. But incredible scenes, baffling almost. You would have thought he would have been a little bit more careful, a little bit more calculated there.
Yeah, I mean, that was very silly to be honest, from the pair of them. I mean, I'm sure Niels was a little frustrated about the contact between themselves at the Sachs curve, but that doesn't mean you can send it straight down the inside of the penultimate corner. Very silly racing between the pair of them, which sends them both towards the back of the field. By the way, I just want to give a shout out on the first lap, not to one of our drivers, but to drone cam operator Hugo Luis. Superb imagery on the race down towards the hairpin. Just got to check it out now. That was brilliant. As we see on board with Eamon Murphy. Will be really desperate to get past Bennett. Bennett's locked in for Munich. So, you know, in this race, he's just focused on winning. He's focused on going the distance, getting through to the final. Eamon Murphy has a lot more to play out here. And if he wants to progress his way to Munich, getting through this expedition, getting through to the final, it won't guarantee it, but it'll just put it onto a decent, a slightly more comfortable position.
Yeah, there are no assurances when it comes to racing, certainly, and especially if you're outside of that top 6, it is well and truly out of your hands. And obviously, we talk about the likes of Mac Backham, who obviously doesn't feature in tonight's semi-final. He was, of course, knocked out when we went racing in the quarterfinals on Friday, and he doesn't feature, of course, here tonight, and therefore won't be able to stake his claim or at least solidify his position heading to the major. Remember, he finished P8 when we went racing, of course, on Friday night. Porsche Coanda obviously going to be a weaker presence without him, that's for sure. Mitchell de Jong, though, giving himself a good account here in this session. Currently occupies 5th place as well, with Luke Bennett chasing him down. Currently see him on our screens now with Eamon Murphy in hot pursuit. I get the vibes that perhaps Eamon Murphy might just settle down a little bit here, just sort of follow Luke Bennett at this stage here, Lewis. At the end of the day, he's got to go for it later on, hasn't he, if he wants to try and challenge for a finals place.
Yeah, this is the thing, is like, I think it'd be a little bit patient. He does have Dara McCormack closing up to him. Did see the question in chat, is Eamon Murphy safe to go to Munich with his current position? No, kind of. Like, he would be close. If he finishes where he currently is, the 17 points would put him on 97. Our expected cut, our expected position in the points where we're expecting the that final points cut predictions around about 95 at the moment. That's kind of where we're leaning towards. So he would be on 97, so he'd be just above that, but it is a prediction. It's not a guarantee. And if I'm Eamon Murphy, I would not be comfortable on 97. I'm sure, I mean, I was going to say I'm sure he knows that, but at the end of the day, he's sitting there in the race thinking, at the moment, I'm not going through to this final race, and that is the focus for him. So he needs to kind of get on with it. I would not be confident in his chances of progressing if he finishes where he currently is.
No, well, essentially what it is, I mean, we speak about the 95 being the general point of cut-off. Obviously, that is a threshold that can be manipulated depending on the results that come out of the semi-final. Not to mention the confirmation of the quarter-final results as well, including in that fact. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Mac Backham in the mix and various others as well. They're still in with a chance, but aren't featuring. Essentially, Eamon Murphy joins him in the pile of drivers that have essentially accrued what you might think are enough points off the face of the semi-final, but because it's effectively been taken out of their hands, should a result not necessarily go their way in the final and they can't do anything about it, it means essentially they've lost their ticket. They're not going to be going to Munich at that point. So you'd much rather place your own fate with your own hands, really, and sort of give yourself a chance, as opposed to letting others dictate as to whether you go through or not. And I'd imagine that's right on the mindset of Eamon Murphy, certainly as a competitor and as a driver.
Yeah, certainly so. Especially when, you know, one of those drivers we were looking at to be basically fighting for the same thing as him, being Thomas Tattler, having the issues that he's had in this race, dropping back to 12th to 11th. He's not going to be scoring the big points. Let's take a look at this whole incident then between Thomas Tattler and Niels Nayak. So a little bit of a hip check from Thomas Tattler, which is a bit naughty. This was ambitious. Tattler does turn straight back onto the apex, to be fair to him, but it was a big send-in from Nayak. At this point, I'd argue you're almost leaning towards racing incident territory. Thibaut Casamont's on the inside. Yeah, they can't really know what's going on. That whole thing on the start-finish straight was, let's call it what it is. You know, it was bad. It was just bad between the pair of them. Both of them will not be progressing further on this event. They're 10 seconds off of that all-important P6, and unfortunately for Thomas Tattler, his chances of progressing through to Munich have gone up with it.
Yeah, they certainly have, and I think he'll be very disappointed with that too. And we've just received a word here that Thomas Tattler has received a drive-through due to a corner cut, so it goes from what was already bad now to a worse scenario, and is now routed to P12 in 18.7 seconds off Niels Nayak's further up. So it literally can't get any worse for him. Obviously, he was looking for a major result to try and get himself into the summit, but at this point now, it's pretty much that his fate has been sealed here. Now it's all up to Eamon Murphy. Of course, Sebastian Jobe has driven a spectacular race, a race we'd almost expect from someone of his caliber here, Lewis. Obviously, 7.5 tenths of a second clear of Moritz Lerner. Obviously, a final placement would give him all the chance in the world. He's coming into this one obviously requiring perhaps a little bit more out of the final races, but that's only because he started that much later in the championship. Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest, Jobe is a quality driver. For anyone who's not really followed the world of sim racing, you might not know too much about Jobe, but he's a quality driver, and so, you know, definitely one to keep an eye on throughout this event. And also, again, fingers crossed, if he gets through into Munich, see what he does there. He does need a good final, I will say that. He's only got about 40 points on the board, and so really, if he wants to progress, you know, bearing in mind that sort of that 95 expected cut, he needs to win the final race. He, at a bare minimum, needs a podium.
Yeah, absolutely. But if anyone can do it, he certainly can. And a win here will certainly go a long way. Despite the points not necessarily being decided off the back of this particular race win, it does put the mindset in place and certainly does strike, you know, should we say, an authority perspective in amongst him as a driver. Certainly here at Hockenheimring, where he certainly looks dialed in after an absolutely emphatic pole lap. That would send him 45 thousandths faster than that. Moritz Lerner in behind as well, who did hold onto that pole position spot for a good duration of that qualifying session. Marcel Chinchik, also another driver that has featured up in the top 3 of many a race and has been one of the consistent faces in that RHE camp, of course, alongside the likes of Yuri Toman and also to a degree Johan Jujovski as well. Remember, RHE in the fight for the team's championship alongside that of Team Redline as well. Of course, Luke Bennett represented them in this race and currently sits in the top 6 as well. As it stands, if you're RHE right now, you want Eamon Murphy to launch an attack on Bennett at this point, don't you, Lewis?
Yeah, for sure. At this point, this is the part of the race where things do calm down a little bit, and always in that final point, someone goes for it. We don't know exactly who it is. We don't know exactly which side this fight is going to come from, but there is a fight that will happen in this train. Someone will. Obviously, we know it'll most likely be in that 6th, 7th location, but like you say, other teams are at play, other things are at play. It means that there might be fights elsewhere that can bring some other fights into it. Looking backwards for Bennett, the important thing though for Bennett is that gap backwards to Murphy is quite large. And unfortunately, you know, when you talk of like one of the major things here with ESL R1, with the GT3s, with the racing around Hockenheimring, it's about that slipstream on the Parabolica down towards the hairpin. Now, that slipstream is obviously less effective when the car ahead has slipstream to the car ahead, has slipstream to the car ahead, has slipstream to the car ahead, has slipstream to Moritz Lerner, who has slipstream to Sebastian Job, who probably doesn't really care too much about winning this race. So it all kind of comes down to whether Lerner goes for a fight, which I'm not sure he will. I think he is more than happy with 2nd place right now, and that he's not got a teammate further back in the train that he's kind of like thinking about, if I fight now, that will roll backwards and then maybe my teammate can get to it. At the moment, he just sat there being like, to be honest, not too bothered.
No, not at all. We're just watching now Eamon Murphy make his way around the stadium section. Of course, very shortly through Mobile 1 curve and now Sachs curve as well very shortly, which he does undertake now before reaching Sud curve. We're here on lap 7 of 10. Soon be there lap 8 of 10 as well. Still Sebastian Job leads the way, and very convincingly as well. Only though half a second back is Moritz Lerner, who's still in the mix with Marcel Chinchik. Equilateral gaps between that and the top 3, with James Baldwin touching that 0.8 of a second gap. Mitchell de Jong as well for Porsche Coanda, who's currently sat in 5th too, but Luke Bennett currently sat in 6th. Will be looking to try and hang on for dear life, very conscious of the fact that there is still very much a team's championship in play, despite the driver situation in terms of getting to that summit, the all-important summit that all the drivers are looking to try and obtain. Naturally, the team's championship is still something vital that those individual teams will be hunting for, and it will mean a lot to some teams, certainly, to stamp their name as a permanent fixture, to be the very first team's champion here in ESL R1, the very first season that ESL have taken and embraced sim racing. It would mean a lot to the teams to put their name, the very first name, on that trophy.
Yeah, RAG's big advantage when it comes to drivers in this is going to be stamped out presently, because at the moment Thibaut Casmont, 9th position is all where he is, and alas, being one of the RAG drivers, being one of the drivers that they would probably need points out to overhaul the quite large points haul that Team Redline have over them. I think it's around 60 points, the advantage that Team Redline presently have. So needs to be a little bit of work from RAG in the next semi-final. Maybe, you know, they're hoping that one of the Team Redline drivers, being Luke Bennett and Kevin Siggy, don't make it all the way through to the final, and that might open up their chances once again. Who knows? There is a lot to play for in the next 3 races that we've got. Obviously, well, this one that we're coming up to close, and then the semi-final 2, and then the final itself. A lot to play for when it comes to the hunt for the team's championship, as well as those positions moving through the community. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts in this, and that is exactly why we love it. Right now, Eamon Murphy has Darren McCormack all over the rear end, but the important thing for him is it is a second large gap up to Bennett. And of course, Murphy, if he drops his position, he's going to lose 2 very important points from 17 down to 15, which would move him down from 97 to that 95, that expected cut.
Yeah, and it might be in jeopardy now as well, because in comes Darren McCormack looking to obtain 7th place away. Nils Nyhox has received a slowdown, 10-second slowdown. Out wide now Murphy. Darren McCormack, easy as you like, up to 7th place, heading out of Spitz Curve now. Very shortly they'll make their way through the middle sector now, and a slowdown as well of 5 seconds to Thomas Tatler. Nils Nyhox, though, I would say, penalised the heaviest, 10 seconds against 5 seconds for Tatler.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I actually do kind of respect that from Rachel. They've not looked at like the incident as a whole. They've looked at the individual things that happen in it and been like, right, Niels, you've done this, you've done that, there's your penalty. Thomas, you've done this, you've done that, there's your penalty. Move on. You know, like you were both being silly. You were both doing silly things. Have your penalties. You're not going anywhere in this anyway. But it's more of like a slap over the wrist and being told off. There was no way they were going to close that gap anyway. It just is what it is. They'll be 11th and 12th as we head on to the final lap of this race. Has Dara McCormack got anything for Luke Bennett? This would be very, very big for McCormack if he can get to Bennett and get through. Obviously, the pair of these two, they're both going their way through into Munich anyway. They're looking for bragging rights over the day. They're looking for victories on today's event.
Yeah, very conscious of that turn one as well is Dara McCormack, obviously just keeping his eyes peeled up the line. Obviously the same corner that would penalise him in qualifying, but trying to urge his car closer and closer to Luke Bennett, who is actually dropping away from Mitchell de Jong in 5th place as well. So Redline might be looking or feeling perhaps a little squeamish on this final lap as that Mercedes looks to get as close as it can to that rear wing of that Team Redline BMW. Heading through the next straight, you can just see they're late on the brakes. Dara McCormack, he's pushing and giving absolutely everything here to allow him the best opportunity possible to get himself into the top 6. And as they make their way through this next right now, he's going to look to try and unhook potentially any opportunity of Bennett securing that placement heading through to the final later on tonight as they now make their way out of this particular segment. Red Bull, or certainly the Mobile 1 curve coming up very shortly. Sachs curve after that. The stadium section beckons. Can McCormack take him right to the end?
Yeah, I think it might be a bit too late, but I'm concerned that BMW tyre for the Team Redline machine, I'm fearing the tyres might be going off ever so slightly. Maybe some overheating, maybe some perfect timing, who knows? Take someone whose BMW's tyres are not going off. G2 Esports, Sebastian Job, final sector for him, and he will be progressing his way through into the final again as he looks to get his way into Munich. He crosses the line in first, Moritz Lerner behind, Marcel Chinchik behind that, and then the trio of Baldwin, de Jong and Bennett does beat McCormack out across the line. McCormack will be a little frustrated with that, but to be fair, I think he's only got himself to blame. That run through T1 in qualifying, that was the big decider.